Shalom and welcome to this 13th part of our short Bible studies. I'd like to begin today by reading from the second letter of Peter, chapter 3, verse 9. Yahweh is not slow in keeping his promise, as some understand slowness. He is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance. Today's subject is this: what happens to people who never hear the gospel? Well, let's start first with a clarification between those who never hear and those who do hear but do not believe what they hear. Those who hear but persistently refuse to believe the life-changing Bezorah or gospel of Yah'shua the Messiah, Jesus Christ, are setting themselves up for disaster. John 3:36 says, "Whoever believes in the Son has eternal life, but whoever rejects the Son will not see life, for Elohim's wrath remains on him." We have all tried to plead ignorance at some time or another in our lives. "Oh, but officer, I didn't know that the speed limit was only 20 miles per hour or 25 kilometers per hour, depending what country you're in. I didn't know it was only 20 miles an hour in the school zone when children were present." Or, "Oh, but teacher, I didn't know that my homework was due today." Imagine telling Yahweh, "Oh, I was supposed to accept what I heard about Yah'shua and live in obedience to his Torah. I misunderstood." "Oh, but that's okay, isn't it?" Oh, no. For those who say that they just didn't get it, Romans chapter 2, verse 13 offers this caveat: "For it is not those who hear the Torah or the law who are righteous in Elohim's sight, but it is those who obey the Torah and who will be declared righteous." Therefore, neither apathy nor feigned ignorance is an acceptable excuse for not embracing Yah'shua the Messiah, whom Yahweh raised from the dead. Okay, but what about those who, for example, live in remote jungles or isolated desert villages or nations isolated by governments hostile to Christianity? What about them? What about those who appear to have no chance of even hearing about Elohim in this life? Well, Christians and Messianics have wrestled with this question for centuries. Even today, not everyone agrees on just what the right answer is. Healthy discussion and debate will probably continue well into the future. And while the issue won't be settled by a single talk like this, there are a few things that we should remember. First, the Bible is clear that all of us, every single one of us, falls short of Yahweh's standard. And you can read about that in Romans chapter 3, verse 23. Yahweh has revealed himself in his creation, leaving those who deny his existence without excuse. You can read in the first chapter, verses 18 to 23. There's no excuse. The evidence that Yahweh exists is everywhere around us. And Paul argued that even Gentiles who never heard the Torah of Moses were answerable to the law's moral and ethical demands because they are written on our hearts. You can read that in Romans 2, verses 14 to 15. Every day, our consciences evaluate our thoughts and actions, defending them or condemning them. Chapter 2, verse 15. So none of us should be surprised to find that we will answer to a divine judge once this life is over, whether or not we have heard about that judge by name. Again, Romans 2:16. That's the first point. The second is as follows: we must remember that salvation is a matter of Yahweh's grace, his undeserved loving kindness, his unmerited favor. Though he is under no obligation to us, he lovingly chose to offer his Son as a sacrifice for our sin. Left to ourselves, we would all die ignorant of Yahweh's Ahavah, his love. There is no one who understands, no one who seeks Elohim, Paul said in Romans 3:11. So, it is only by grace, it is only by undeserved loving kindness, unmerited favor, that any of us are actually saved at all. And you can read about that in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8. The third thing is this: we can take comfort in the fact that we serve a perfectly just and compassionate Elohim. Yahweh once promised Abraham that he would spare a corrupted, wicked city if there were only 10 righteous people. Do you remember that in Genesis chapter 18, verses 16 to 33? And we know from 1 Timothy 2:4 that Yahweh wants all men to be saved. That is his desire. So we must trust him with our uncertainties about the fate of others. And fourthly, and finally, even if we are unsure about what Yahweh will do with those who never hear the Bezorah, the gospel, there is no doubt about our responsibility towards those who have yet to hear. In his letter to the Romans, Paul repeated the Tanakh, the Old Testament promise, from Joel chapter 2, verse 32, that everyone who calls upon the name of Yahweh will be saved. Romans 10:13. But he also reminded the believers at Rome, how then can they call on the one they have not believed in? And how can they believe in the one of whom they have not heard? And how can they hear without someone preaching to them? And how can they preach unless they are sent? Romans 10:14 to 15. Before Yah'shua returned to the Father after his resurrection, he instructed his followers to make Talmidim, or disciples of all nations. Matthew 28:19. The Greek word for a nation, or ethnos, is the same word from which we get our term ethnic. In other words, there is no tribe, race, or ethnic group that Yahweh does not want to reach with that good news. He has entrusted us with the privilege of taking his Bezorah, his gospel, to the ends of the earth. Acts 1:8. We are Elohim's hands and feet in this world, equipped to take the message of salvation to those who have not yet heard. If Elohim is not wanting anyone to perish, 2 Peter 3:9, then we should not stand idle while untold millions go through life, never hearing the good news of Yahweh's mercy. Now, I know this is a very big subject that has engendered many discussions. There are those like us who believe that in the end all will be saved, even if they do not receive the same rewards or glory. And Paul, you may remember, talked about this to Corinthians when he speaks of there being 3 different glories, which in terms of brightness may be compared with the sun, the moon, and the stars. I firmly believe that Yahweh is just. I do believe he has called us to witness, but I do not believe that we are indispensable. If we refuse or cannot go out, he will always raise somebody else to do the work. And there are many ways in which we can witness. The greatest witness of all, of course, being our life. And once people see what our life is, that there is something in it which is different, that it's desirable, then people will start to ask us, what is it that makes you so content, so peaceful, so calm, so joyful, so trusting, so full of love, whatever it may be that draws them. That is the primary witness that any of us and all of us can have. And of course, we must remember also under whose authority we are, particularly when it comes to the means by which we can and should evangelize. In a collective situation like a congregation, of course, the decision is usually made either by the congregation as a whole, or by the pastor, or board of elders as to where, for example, funds should be directed in missionary work. Cooperative effort is very, very much a part of evangelism, even though, of course, personal initiative does very much play its role. Particularly if large sums of money are needed, then obviously those who are responsible for supplying that money must also be consulted, particularly those who are in responsibility over it. There are those, for example, who save the third of their tithe, which is allocated to the poor or to missions. They make that decision themselves, or they will place it at the feet of the pastor of their local congregation, who then collectively with the congregation, after prayer, will decide what the funds are to be used for. And likewise in a family, wife and children, if they feel moved to evangelize in a way that requires the commitment of money, they will of course consult their father and husband first, because he's been given the authority as the steward of the family as well. It's the same principle on every level. You see the basic admonition or pattern in Scripture. Likewise, our calling must be by Yahweh himself. It is always a good idea to get confirmation from others, particularly as we have a tendency to listen to our own hearts before the truth of the Ruach, and we can very often get the two confused. So numbers, congregational decisions, family decisions, all of these play a part in evangelism, particularly in their funding and in other provisions like accommodation and so forth. So, yes, it is absolutely our responsibility to go out and to evangelize and to witness, but it is also our responsibility to hear where Yahweh is calling us to and to whom he is sending us. We could, if we wanted to, go out on the streets, as many street evangelists do, and I've no doubt some are actually called to do that, and we could end up preaching to thousands of people over and over again who absolutely refuse to hear the gospel. That's obviously not how it's to be done either. The prophet Samuel sought to fulfill Yahweh's commandment, his mitzvah, to find a new king to replace King Saul, who had gone into apostasy. He at first was making judgments by the flesh. He was looking at the sons of Jesse and thinking, oh, this must be the one that is tall and handsome or whatever. He's older, more experienced, more mature. But Yahweh said, no, this is not the one you are to anoint as the next king of Israel. And it turned out to be the youngest son of Jesse, David, who was called. I think it's also very important to understand that a reason that we have collective decision-making in the body is very often because of maturity. I had an interesting vision this morning because I was praying about this matter, and Yahweh showed me a vision. And in the vision, I was shown three forests lined against or alongside each other, much as you would plant, for example, a row of vegetables like lettuce or cabbage or kale or broccoli or whatever. And the first forest was totally grown and mature. It had reached its maximum height. The trees were densely packed together, as they are here in Scandinavia. And it was clear that this forest could neither grow out or up anymore. It had reached its full height. And in the second row, there was another forest, and this was identical to the first. It too had reached its maximum height and had grown to its maximum extent. And then in front of these two forests was a third one. And the first third of that forest had grown to its maximum height, like the other two. And then progressively there were trees of different heights going all the way down to ground level, down to young saplings, showing that there were parts of this forest which had not yet grown up to maturity. And then the rest of the land, which was designated as forest, still had nothing growing on it. And Yahweh showed me that this was a picture of maturity and experience versus immaturity and the lack of experience, and why it is that we have elders in congregations, and why it is we have parents to whom we are directed to seek counsel. We may indeed experience the overflowing, bubbling love and passion of the presence of the Ruach in our lives, but not have the wisdom always to discern clearly what is the right thing to do. Evangelism, witnessing, is both individual and collective. It's individual in the first of the festivals from Pesach to Shavuot, which designates one-to-one relationship with Yahweh, but the rest, actually, Shavuot is the beginning of corporate or collective action and witness and growing and covenant. It is so important we follow biblical pattern, both in evangelism, in our relationships, and in indeed important life-changing decisions, so that we do not, in our immaturity, go and make disastrous choices, however well motivated we may be. May Yahweh bless you in your evangelism, in your desire to witness. We are, of course, here to support in any way that we can. May you have a blessed day. Yahweh bless.